Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for the return of Yunoreview, where essentially at the end of every month I'm going to try my damnedest to consistently talk about records that are relevant to the world of music, but more specifically relevant to me, that I did not get a chance to talk about, to touch down upon over the past month. So I'll be giving you opinions on records that you may have been curious about, what I've been thinking of them, and on LPs that you might not have come across and may be way more interesting to you than they are to me. That's the beauty of music. Subjectivity. So let's start this thing. Album title, Cal. Give a listen to this LP if you're looking for some magical, mystical cloud rap with some pretty good, very choppy beats. I mean, these beats are really sort of chopped and screwed slow jams. There's a huge voice delivering all of the lyrics on this LP too, and while a lot of the flows on this record are pretty decent, there's not much about what the MC on here is saying or sort of his very low position in the mix of this album that makes me want to tune in deeply to what exactly it is he's spitting. The record does put forth a pretty strong, nice, pleasant vibe though. This LP is very sweet, it's sensual, jangly guitar pop with a slight garage rock edge. There's actually a pretty strong, I think, 80s rock sort of new wave vibe on this LP too. Like, I could definitely see Blondie's music being a big influence on this new Dum Dum Girls LP. I think the songs on this record are dark, they're moody, but consistently with this LP, like with their previous albums, I'm usually very underwhelmed by the vocals and the choruses that Dum Dum Girls place into their songs. I think sonically this record has much more clarity than some of the fuzzier stuff that they put out in the past, and I like that. But this album just does not have the urgency that I look for in a rock record, in a pop record. It's just a little bit too breezy for me. Volume 3 of instrumentals to drop from this cloud rap production pioneer. Songs that have found placement in other projects like Grand Theft Auto 5 or the latest A$AP Rocky record or the latest Mac Miller record. The track he recently did with Doom, aka MF Doom, is on this LP as well. And while a lot of the instrumentals that Clams Casino puts together aren't exactly amazing to listen to on their own, there are some good beats on this thing. Even if the usual very hazy atmosphere that comes onto his tracks isn't as heavy, isn't as powerful on this set of instrumentals. And I think that's a conscious decision. It definitely feels like he's trying to change his sound, evolve it, diversify it a little bit. And that's a great thing because it does lead to some interesting beats on here, although I wasn't all that crazy about some of the unreleased material on this collection of tracks. To me, this project is not quite as essential as the previous two Clams Casino tapes, but if you are into those collections, then this is something you're going to want to listen to as well. On this LP, expect to hear some strange, psychedelic, instrumental jams, just like the last Guardian Alien LP, except the tracks on this thing are a lot more diversified. There are 5 songs on here, as opposed to just one really long one, like on the last Guardian Angel LP. Though 2 of them are just 1 minute long, and the final track on here is 20 minutes long. There's still some decent tracks on this thing, some very mind-altering, very sound-bending moments, but the 2 tracks that are 1 minute long are just a huge tease to me, in that they put out some of the most interesting ideas on the entire LP, but they're just cut so short. And the 2 mid-sized tracks on here, while I do think they are okay, it's really the final closing track, the title track, the 20-minute long track that really ends up wowing me with its instrumental intensity, some of the experimental electronics that go into the track, and just the manic vocals toward the end of the song. Of course, drummer Greg Fox's playing is fantastic throughout this LP too. If you're into instrumental, experimental music with a lot of interplay and something that really creates a cloud, a cacophony of sound that you can really get lost in if you love sort of vast, directionless jams, then give this thing a listen. These guys are a New York post-hardcore and indie rock outfit whose debut LP here I was really excited for because they were putting it out on Death Wish Records and they had some really impressive singles leading up to the release of this LP. But I just felt horrifically let down by what the band actually put forth on this record. For one, the recording on this thing is not that hot. I'm surprised this record is on Death Wish, given how good the recordings of many of the bands on this label are. I mean, to me, this record instrumentally sounds so hollow. The guitars and the bass drown out the drums in a really unflattering way, and the overall recording itself doesn't even feel that loud. It just feels so limp and pastel colored and just very boring to listen to. And on top of it, there are just some laughably bad vocals just topped across every single track on this album, in my opinion. I mean, they feel so forced, so over the top, so overacted. I mean, they're just really unpleasant. Overall, this LP to me just sounds and feels like a really weak demo, especially on the ballad here. Mistress appears at funeral. I mean, the vocals, the singing there as well. I mean, there is a different singer on that track, but it sounds just as silly. And the weirdest thing about this LP is that collectively, with a track in the middle of the album and a track at the end of the album, there is about 40 minutes of time spent with pretty much just an audio confessional or interview with Angelique Gautier, former porn star, and her anecdotes about her career and just sort of her time in the industry and all the time she spent with different celebrities is interesting. Unfortunately, way more interesting than anything the band did on this record musically. This guy's a West Coast rapper, hip-hop veteran. He's been pretty prolific lately with solo material, putting out new stuff with his old clique, Hieroglyphics, as well as Deltron 3030, and this latest release of his is one of his most eccentric releases in a while, with really strange, noisy hip-hop beats and the kind of in-your-face, I'm going to say whatever I want to say, this is my point of view kind of songwriting that drew me so much to his earlier stuff, like his debut. My only major issue with this album is that the beats do get a little redundant, a little repetitive, and the choruses aren't that impressive either, but I think what Del comes forward and says on this record and sort of the texture and the personality of these beats are interesting enough to maybe get someone who's not into this guy's music maybe digging through his discography. The new Warpaint record, another really sort of unaffected rock album, unfortunately. An LP whose recording is definitely way less hazy than The Fool, the band's previous release, and that's nice. It was nice to sort of hear the band in the raw a little bit more. And some beautiful moments did come out as a result of that sonic change, like the introductory track on here, and Love Is To Die, and I think my favorite song on this entire LP was the very dancey and post-punky disco very. Still, at the end of the day, I'm not really impressed with the sound of this band, with the songs that they write. I really end up being more impressed by what this record is trying to be rather than be impressed by what it actually is. I mean, there are moments on here where the songs remind me a little bit of Smashing Pumpkins or Portishead. There are some trip-hop style tracks on this thing, or like Massive Attack, but when I hear a very obvious influence, all I'm really reminded of is, I mean, this would be great if the vocals were a little bit better, or if the melodies were a little bit stronger. To me, in a word, this album just feels so drained. I mean, it's way too drained for me to be excited about it, emotional about it. Sadly, I just don't find this new Warpaint record to be that interesting or bold. For me, this record is a sort of bland, rockin', uppity, kind of feel-good indie pop, indie rock record whose lead vocalist I couldn't pick out of a lineup even if I was forced to. It's just way too commercial and unadventurous to really appeal to me in any way. A lot of the tracks on here remind me of like my least favorite Biffy Clyro and Portugal the Man records, essentially. I don't like this, not even a little. It's not for me. This new Angel Haze record that I was kind of looking forward to, considering how much respect I have for this girl as a singer, as a rapper, as a spitter. She's a great rapper with a fast flow, and I think her voice has personality, and I think, you know, she has a future in hip-hop music, but not with this record, in my opinion. I mean, this record to me was really heartbreaking in that I feel like her earlier tracks were so gritty and so just clenched teeth, aggressive. I mean, she was really coming out and sort of establishing herself as a strong MC, and now she's hopping on all of these radio-friendly, commercial rap, bubblegum pop beats that just sound silly to me and sort of take away her bark and take away her bite too. I could see Angel Haze sort of gaining some more accessibility by going down this road, but the shine gained from this LP is going to be very short lasting. I mean, she's going to have to do something a little bit more definitive than this on future records in order to hold people's attention. Even the biggest names in pop rap right now aren't riding these kinds of sounds anymore, and the ones that are still, to a degree, like Big Sean, for example, aren't even taken that seriously or seen as one of the big names in pop rap right now. The new Alcest record, Shelter, finally this French rock project that's always taken a very hazy and blissful approach to black metal takes the plunge and just makes a shoegaze record. We've always known that shoegaze has been a primary influence on Alcest's music, and I mean, this record is purely that. And while this record is very light on the ears, and it is very ethereal, it is absolutely boring. It's like listening to My Bloody Valentine or a Slow Dive record where those two bands were forced to only use reverb as a way to alter the sounds in their music, and that's it. They weren't allowed to use any other kinds of effects or any other kind of sonic adventuring, just reverb. The melodies and the songs on this thing aren't even that memorable. The vocals are absolutely underwhelming in every way that they could possibly be. They're not even pretty to listen to. They're not even passionate. This record is, to me, adult contemporary shoegaze. I mean, that's it. To me, this record is not pretty. It's not sweet. It's just bland, it's just unmemorable. The new You Blew It record, keep on doing what you're doing. If you're huge into that Midwest emo, sort of slightly more vintage, like mid to early 2000s indie rock sound, then do look this record up. They capture that sound really well, and they have some decent tunes on here too. I wouldn't say that they come through with a bold or definitive style all their own, which did kind of keep me back from loving this record, but it is a decent listen if you are into that sound. And that's pretty much all the albums that I wanted to touch down on in this Why You Know review. Cool? Cool. Transition, if you've given these LPs a listen, what did you think of them? Love them? Hate them? Why? And what other records did you think I should have talked about this month? And maybe we'll sort of hash it out over them in the comments if I get a chance to come hang out with you guys. Cool? Cool. Anthony Fantano, Why You Know review, forever.